20% of the world's petroleum and nearly 20% of global LNG trade pass through a single choke point, a 21-mile-wide needle's eye. This is not a theoretical vulnerability. It is the current state of the Strait of Hormuz. Following the military escalation on February 28th, the global energy market entered its most volatile window in decades. Tonight, we open the Verity files to decode the arithmetic of a global supply shock. The headlines focus on the oil price, but the crisis runs deeper. A financial blockade that has made shipping legally unviable. A food supply chain unraveling thousands of miles from the Persian Gulf. And a cyber escalation running alongside every kinetic strike. Today, we separate the noise from the data. The closure of the strait is not primarily a naval story. It is a financial one. Modern shipping runs on insurance. Following the escalation, major underwriters canceled war risk coverage, effective March 5th. Without that coverage, ships cannot legally or economically transit the route. 20 million barrels of daily flow had nowhere to go. Reuters reported at least 150 tankers anchored in open Gulf waters as of early March. Not because Iran physically blocked them, because the insurance market did. All 5 major container lines, Maersk, MSC, CMA CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, COSCO, all have suspended Hormuz transits. They are rerouting around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to voyage times, tying up global shipping capacity at both ends simultaneously. Think of it this way. It is the maritime equivalent of closing a highway and forcing every truck onto a 1,000-mile dirt road detour. According to the IEA, bypass pipelines can only handle roughly 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels per day. The remaining 15 million barrels are simply waiting. Not every country faces equal exposure. Asian countries account for 84% of the oil and 83% of the LNG shipped through the strait. Japan and South Korea are among the most exposed. Japan relies on imported fossil fuels for 87% of its total energy. South Korea, 81%. For these economies, the strait is not a trade route, it is life support. The response has been immediate. In Thailand, the government has mandated work-from-home arrangements for state agencies to cut fuel consumption. In the Philippines, government offices have shifted to compressed 4-day work weeks. Imagine every government building in a major nation going dark for an extra day every week just to keep the lights on in hospitals. Economists call this demand destruction. Consumption does not fall by choice, it falls by absolute necessity. Oil is only the first domino. Modern agriculture depends on sulfur, a byproduct of oil refining used to create fertilizer. The Persian Gulf handles roughly a third of the world's seaborne fertilizer trade. If this chain breaks, we don't just lose fuel, we lose the ability to grow food at scale. Research from North Dakota State University highlights a specific vulnerability. While the United States produces roughly 94% of its ammonia domestically, it still relies on Gulf exporters for 17% of its urea and 20% of its phosphate consumption. Think of it this way. For every 5 bags of fertilizer on an American farm, one of them traces back to the stability of the Persian Gulf. What begins as an energy crisis ends at your dinner table. As the blockade entered its third week, the White House issued a blunt call for international support. President Trump questioned why the United States, which imports less than 1% of its oil through Hormuz, should bear the full burden of its security. He pointed specifically to the thousands of U.S. troops stationed in South Korea and Japan, noting that their level of enthusiasm for the mission would be closely watched. But the global response has been measured. While the UK is working on a separate coalition plan, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has clarified that this will not be an official NATO mission. France has shown similar caution, suggesting an international mission is possible, but only when circumstances permit and active fighting has subsided. Even within the U.S. military, there is reluctance. Despite near-daily pleas from the shipping industry, the U.S. Navy has thus far refused to provide direct escorts for commercial vessels, leaving the arithmetic of the Strait in a state of paralysis. This paralysis has accelerated what we call the Great Realignment. Nations are no longer treating the Persian Gulf as a partner, but as a strategic liability. This month, we have seen a decade of energy transition compressed into 30 days. In Japan, the government has fast-tracked the restart of multiple nuclear reactors to break the 95% import trap. In India, emergency powers have been invoked to maximize domestic LPG production and prioritize supply for more than 330 million households, forcing industry and commercial users to absorb the shortfall. The arithmetic of 2026 has taught a brutal lesson. The winners are no longer those who control the oil, but those who can generate their own power within their own borders. The 21-mile needle has finally forced the world to stop threading it. The move towards self-sufficiency is no longer about the environment, it is about survival. The cost of oil is not confined to the pump. It is embedded in nearly every physical product that moves across the modern world. Diesel powers trucks, fuel moves ships, natural gas drives fertilizer production, plastics, pharmaceuticals, electronics, packaging, all trace back to hydrocarbons. When energy prices surge, the effect does not appear as a single spike. It propagates outward through thousands of supply chains simultaneously. Economists call this cost-push inflation. In practice, it means that while the U.S. national average for gas has hit $3.54 per gallon, the highest of either Trump term, the true damage is felt in the price of everything else, rising slowly, unevenly, and for far longer than the initial shock. Central banks cannot drill for oil. Interest rates do not produce fertilizer. Monetary tools are effective against excess demand, but they are far less effective against physical scarcity. This is why energy crises are uniquely destabilizing. They strike at the foundation of production itself. In 2026, the price of stability is no longer measured in barrels, but in purchasing power. The arithmetic of the 21-mile choke point has reached the kitchen table, and for the average consumer, the bill is just beginning to arrive.